Welcome back to the Day One podcast. I'm Adam Daly.
And I'm Brett Nord.
We're excited to be back. This is a great episode.
Tons to talk about.
Not only do we have a guest joining us that has a lot of experience with shortcuts, and we're going to dive into that later, we have a lot of updates for the app that we want to talk about today.
Yes, exciting times. Things we've talked about for a long time, Adam.
Yeah.
Now we're actually having come out.
Well, like I said, I think I've tried to express how difficult software development can be. Right. It's something that I've learned, started working here. Mm-hmm. It's not just turning on a switch to make a feature work. There's a lot of code behind it,
Sure.
a lot of manual effort going into that, plus testing, plus et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
What's the impact going to be? How does that work with our backend sync service and all that stuff? So I don't think it's realistic for a smaller team to be pumping out huge features every single release all the time.
Sure.
But we're really excited to bring these ones to you. Some of them have been going on for months, testing and coding and figuring out all the back-end stuff. So we're excited to announce. You want me to go ahead and just dive into it?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't talk so much
Don't
generalities.
stop. So first of all, version 4.0 is in beta right now. The team has also decided to match up the update version numbers. So Mac OS will be getting 4.0 soon, as well as iOS will be getting 4.0. Android, let me update you on Android. Basically what's going on right now is kind of a major overhaul of the Android app. I don't want to speak out of place or anything like that, but a lot of it is being rebuilt. And we're excited about that. We're still pursuing that project. We're still working on it. I know there was a moment there where we thought we're not sure what we're going to do with this, but it is going forward. Okay, I don't have any ETAs just yet until we get them from the team, but it is an ongoing project that has been prioritized, at least with one of our engineers. So Android is being worked on. But 4.0 for iOS, 4.0 for Mac are coming very soon. And the big reveal on this update, people have already started to notice video entries. Video support. It's in beta. It's being tested by our beta testers. Thank you so much, those of you who help out with that. Some details about it. What we've decided with this first release here is that videos will be limited to 3 minutes or less. It will be at a 1080p resolution, so it's still high quality, high def. It's not ultra high def like a 4K or something like that, but it's working. And we've been testing this. Maybe you did or didn't know. We have been testing this with the Instagram importer because that did support video. That was kind of our first little soft launch of what video support would be, and now it's official in 4.0, which will be coming out soon.
We've submitted it, right?
Or it's being submitted very soon. Very soon. So, yeah, video support, everybody. High fives, high five and a million angels. That's what we're doing right now.
Exciting. Can't
very
wait
excited
to
about that.
To hear how people are using it.
Yes, exactly. Apple Health integration. We've found a way to now report daily mindfulness by when you're journaling into your Apple Health app. Okay, so now it'll start recording that. If you use other integrated apps, Brett was talking to me a little bit about from a user who uses the Streaks app as well in connection with that.
Right.
And he got a notification recently that he met his daily journal goal because this information, after he wrote in day one, it recorded in Apple Health and then pushed it onto the Streaks app. So very cool stuff. You can now track your mindfulness minutes in the Apple Health app starting in 4.0 and later. Another big one, I think this is exciting, and I'm happy to announce this to everyone. Dark mode is now officially available on iOS for all users, Basic, Plus, and Premium. Part of that is iOS 13, which is coming out a little bit later this fall, is giving system-wide dark mode to everyone. So obviously we felt it would be appropriate to move in that direction, and the reason why it was a paid feature before is because we built our own custom dark mode interface. So now that it's going to be available system-wide, actually, maybe 4.0 or 3.81, I can't remember, that all users will have access to dark mode, regardless of subscription. So anyway, what else?
Great stuff.
Do I have more stuff?
Those are the big ones.
Well, Mac parity too. Like they're still working on that kind of stuff.
Streaks, days in a row with an entry is now displayed.
Yes. So
timeline stats.
What will happen when you download version 4, you'll notice that the stats right above the entries on the timeline view have more information. And that is scrollable. So you can swipe it to the right and see additional information. Let me just give you an example here of some of those, what they will look like. I'm just going to describe them here, but what you're going to see is, how many entries, what kind of media, how many days, and then there's a streak up there as well. So how many days in a row that you've journaled. It'll talk about how many entries this week, how many at different places, how many tags, videos, photos, audio, etc. So definitely some cool stuff being tracked there that you'll be able to, take a look at and see how you're doing journaling. Templates are still a little bit out. They're still working on them. There's still things to be done there. The idea is ultimately we're going to have templates syncing between devices so they can be called up and accessed anywhere. They'll also be independent of the reminders feature, so you can call up a template any time, regardless of you having a reminder set up. So that is awesome. And we even have a few curated options. So, some templates that other people are using. And we'll be adding those in so you can have access to that, or you can create your own custom stuff. You can use Markdown. There are little sections that you can add for headers and stuff like that. So very cool stuff coming. It's still a little bit out, but the team is working on it. So anything else? More iOS 13 stuff. We're very excited about iOS 13. Brett reminded me of a call out we should probably say, and most of you probably understand this. I wouldn't expect anything less of you. But when installing OS betas, please be cautious.
Yes.
Okay, not all developers are jumping right on the initial release of those betas and making their app compatible with those. What we do here usually is wait until closer of the release when most of the earlier bugs are worked out, and that's when the team will jump in. Sometimes that happens I wish I would have written this down sometime, but it's usually later in August, so a little bit closer to the time of the public release. So be cautious if you're installing iOS 13 or Mac OS 10.15 or Watch OS 6. Is it 6?
Have they released the Watch OS beta?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Guess I was waiting for the public beta for that.
So just be careful.
Not use it.
Just be careful. Yeah. I have it on my iPad right now, and it's mostly functional. I've been able to do a few things. There are some bugs. I love the floating keyboard, but it'll get stuck sometimes, and so just be cautious.
Yeah.
Just know we haven't started testing on it just yet. So if you do have iOS 13 on there, there may be some issues with that. Just be aware. So that's it. But I think that's a huge deal. That's a lot of stuff coming that I think a lot of people are excited about.
Yes.
Oh, another big one. Sorry, we almost forgot. Emailing entries.
Oh, yes. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm looking at Brett's face, and I'm just searching for what am I forgetting?
That's it.
Emailing entries. Okay, I'm really excited about this one.
That
We've had a
did
lot
come
of
out
requests.
after our last podcast, so we haven't had a chance to talk about that.
Exactly. So what this does, on iOS version 3.8 and later, you can go into the journal settings of day one and find an email address specific to that journal. So what you can do then is send an email from any computer. And I think this is great for Windows users since the web app is not yet ready.
Right.
This is a great solution for those of you who may not have a Mac or who want to journal from a different machine than a Mac or iOS device. Emailing entries is a great way to do that. So go find your email address in the day one settings for journals. You'll go into each individual journal. Each one has its own address. So this is great. You can set up an email address for multiple journals, right? Or what I mean is you can have an individual email address for each journal and then send an email to any one of them. The cool thing is, and this is just a little nerding out bit, you can save that as a contact. If you tap on that email address in day one, it'll ask you if you want to save it as a contact. Right. And it will put the journal color and day one logo as the photo, which I think is cool. And it will also put the name of your journal in the title there, and it will say day one. So then you can access it from your contacts at any time. Just send an email. Maybe if it's more comfortable to write on a full-size keyboard, you don't have a Mac, whatever the case may be, this is a great opportunity.
Doesn't matter if you put it in the to field, the CC, the BCC.
Works for all of them. Attachments are not supported yet,
right?
But the email entry feature does work with encrypted journals. The other cool thing, just as far as like how I would use this feature, maybe a collaboration. So officially, shared journals is not
correct.
A feature we currently support. But if a user or someone wanted to have someone else contribute to that journal, you can share that email address with another person and say, send an email. It will create an entry in my day one journal.
So be careful who you share that with.
Of course. But it's a really cool feature. I'm really excited about this. The team did a great job. The web server team worked hard on this, and it's a fantastic feature. I hope that it is helpful for you. I think the collaboration aspect of it is really neat. I think a lot of people can find some use out of that.
We've had some discussions already on the Facebook community about using the email too.
Yeah.
In upcoming podcasts, the next two, we're going to be talking with folks that are getting more into that as well as using video. We're going to have Mike from our Facebook moderator on to talk about how he's using video, since he's been a beta tester. So we'll have some great ideas coming up.
Yeah, very exciting. A lot of cool stuff that is happening here at Day One. I'm grateful it's happening right now. Thank you for your patience. I know some of you have wanted some of these features a little while ago. You've requested them. We hear you. I promise. All feature requests go into a repository. We collect all of that data. We collect every single vote on a certain feature and put that in so that we can keep track of all of that information. Obviously, we can't put in everything.
Sure.
But we do our best to find features that are going to support the mission of Day One of being just the best digital journal app out there. So, yeah, awesome. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your requests. Thank you for your beta testing. It's been great. I love this company. I love this app.
You know what, Adam? It shows.
Thank you.
Seriously.
I'm a little passionate.
You do a great job of support. I get a lot of, you do too, a lot of people that mention how much you help. So kudos to the support team. I'm excited to talk to Martijn from the Netherlands. We've had discussions. Martijn, you and I started talking back in January. You emailed me after we did a show about Siri Shortcuts, and you shared with me one of yours. Martijn, you've been patiently quiet there listening as you joined our call this morning, our conversation. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into your use of Day One.
All right. Well, good afternoon.
Yes.
So I'm from the Netherlands. Basically started journaling somewhere in 2012 when my first kid was born. So basically, I've never really been much of a journaler, but the basic goal was just to start documenting my kids' lives, just having a journal with not just pictures, but also some additional text, and being able to hand it over to them once they are a bit older.
Nice.
So that basically just got me started into journaling, and now I'm also a bit more trying to use the journal for my personal planning as well.
Nice.
A lot of those, I share that same sentiment. For me, a big motivator for journaling is keeping track of my perspective, my life, my struggles, my wins, so that I can pass it on to my kids and even document their lives as well so they can have those kinds of records.
And Martijn, how old are your children or your child?
So the first one just turned 7.
7.
And the second one is with 4.
Okay.
Awesome.
And are they, you said you were journaling for them. Are they involved in the process? Are they telling you what they're up to and recording audio?
Well, I do try to involve them, especially since it is helping in taking more pictures, because most of the time they don't want their picture taken. But if I mention that it is for their journal and it is nice to have some pictures and some stories about what they did, then suddenly it's okay to take a picture. So that definitely helps. And sometimes they do tell a bit more about what happened at school, for instance. Because usually if you pick them up from school, they don't really want to talk about what happened at school. It's just they want to go out and play.
Sure.
So that also helps to learn a bit more about their day.
Nice.
That's great.
Love that.
I've done the audio feature for that as well, where I'll maybe at the end of the day just start an audio recording and say, "Tell me about your day." Maybe some follow-up questions, but just kind of let them run the dialogue and just have those little audio snippets in my journal. I think that's priceless.
Yeah, that would be even nicer with video.
Yes, exactly. Agreed.
Yeah.
Right. And I love the idea that they're more on board when they know it's for a journal than just, "Oh, Dad, you're taking a picture of me," but you're actually using it for a journal for documentation. That's awesome. Good. So I know we're going to talk about Siri Shortcuts in a minute, but tell us more about your process. So do you have other than talking to your kids when they get home from school, do you have a workflow or a kind of routine that you follow to journal?
It would be good if I had a routine, because every now and then I notice that I'm far behind on journaling all the things that have happened. So usually it's just my photo stream on the iPhone or iPad that basically I browse through all the photos and pick out the best photos and write down some stories. Because I do think adding some text to the pictures helps me and helps them ultimately remember what happened.
Yes.
Just to provide some more context. So for the kids' journals, there's not really a routine. Usually, if I do write something, it's in the evening, or in the moment that something does happen, I take a picture and I write down some quick words, and then I can add to it later in the day. For my personal journal, it's mostly just planning out the day, the week, the quarter, or the year, and then it's more in the evening reviewing the day and planning ahead for the next day, and that's usually always in the evening. And for the daily planning, it's always on my iPhone. But for the week, I use the iPad in the weekend just to plan the entire week.
Nice.
Well, I was just going to say, I always feel like I'm not doing enough. But maybe other people feel that way too.
Sure.
Okay, I'm listening to Martin's experience, and I think it is fantastically laid out and organized. I completely respect this method and this approach. And when I hear it, I get motivated in the sense that I want to do more journaling in the moment like that. But I don't. I'll maybe take a picture and then journal later, which I guess is still effective because that's my path. Sure. But I do love the idea of journaling in the moment, just capturing that right away, because sometimes some of the details slip us.
Sure.
We don't remember all those details in the moment or later on.
Yeah, but I think there's also a difference, because even if I journal every day, that doesn't mean the quality is always good.
True.
So it's one thing to make it a routine and to write something down every evening or every day. But the challenge that I still have is taking enough time to really reflect on something and to really take the time to write down some thoughts, and not just some quick sentence and hit the check mark. I've done my journaling, but
Sure.
really taking the time to reflect.
I like that.
So you're doing that in addition to some shortcuts and Siri shortcuts that are helping you with automation. Is that right?
Yeah, well, for my personal journals, everything is created through Siri Shortcuts.
Okay.
Not so much through voice activation. I use the it's not the control center, but if you swipe to the right on your phone.
Oh, the today screen.
You have the today view.
Yeah. Yep.
So I just have some shortcuts there for creating a daily entry or a weekly entry or a quarterly. And that's just setting down a template with all the headings and all the information that I use in my system.
So you're using a Markdown template for now?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And tell us what that is. What is it that prompts you?
Well, that's changes over time, because I'm always trying to evolve the system based on what I personally find interesting, or what I'm reading on the internet, how other people are using such systems. So it's always looking for refining it and finding the way that best fits my needs.
Sure.
But the main parts usually are what are the once a year I just plan the entire year on a high level. What are the most important things that are going to happen this year, or what do I want to develop for myself? And then on a quarterly basis, I try to narrow it down a bit and work on some habits or learning some new skills, for instance. And those topics or those habits are are what I enter into the Shortcuts app, so that each time I create a daily entry, those reminders are there. So
nice.
partly it's just a reminder, this is what you want to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also that, especially on a weekly basis, I have some tasks in day one for the things that I really want to work on. So, for instance, if right now it's about eating healthy food and getting enough exercise, those are things that I have to check each week.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't get checked for a week, that's fine. But at least I'm reminded every week and every day that it is something that I want to work on.
that.
I could, of course, enter that manually, or I could use the day one template. But using Siri Shortcuts allows me a bit more flexibility, and also adding things like the weather, or each entry, or especially the daily entries, are the title of the entry is the current date. So it's always Monday, July the 8th, for instance. So this is also much easier to read the entire timeline.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's an important point to bring up. Like, templates in day one aren't necessarily going to replace these other things like the shortcuts, which for a minute there I kind of was trying to internalize that, thinking, well, as soon as templates come out, nobody's going to need to use Siri Shortcuts. But that's not true. Mm-hmm. Like Martin's saying here, there's a lot of other elements. If you're good at this, or if you find the right one and know how to tweak it, there's a lot of other integrations you can put in there, like the weather, for example. I mean, obviously, when you're adding a new entry in day one and you've got location services enabled, the weather should be there, but this is like putting it in the body of the entry or additional information from other locations. I know some people do that, pulling data from like the activity or the health app and stuff like that and putting it into Siri Shortcuts, and then it creates an entry in day one. So Siri Shortcuts won't go away because there's a lot of really great integrations you can do there. So I think these are fascinating. Are these things that you could share that we could put in the notes here for the app?
Yeah, I suppose. I'd have to find out how to share it from the Shortcuts app, but that's totally fine, of course. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Because I just think, for me personally, I've done with Brian Renshaw's. We had him on a number of weeks ago. He's got a fairly basic one, but you can go in there and tweak it and kind of make it your own, and really develop something that you would use, not necessarily. I mean, go ahead.
I think that's also the difference between what you can offer from the day one app. You can try to make it as complex as what Siri Shortcuts offers, but that's making the day one app much more complicated. Yeah. Rather than the app itself being focused on being a good journaling app and leaving all the customizations to the Siri Shortcuts.
Yeah, agreed. I completely agree. Thank you.
So months ago, I was intrigued with your shortcuts that were helping you with weather, which I thought was awesome. Moon information, because why not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Reminders to keep meditating by calculating the number of days you had meditated in a row. Are you still doing kind of those options?
Well, I've basically stopped using the weather. And also the moon phase, and basically the reason for trying out the moon phase is that I've heard a couple of times people mentioning the influence that the current moon phase has on people. Well, I always thought that sounds like nonsense, but why not try it out? So I thought, well, why not just add the current moon phase in the daily entries, and then afterwards, after a week, after a month, or after a couple of months, I can just check and see if it has any impact on, or if there's any correlation between the moon phase and how I'm feeling. For instance.
Oh yeah, interesting.
So it's ultimately I'm just looking for an RSS feed that provides the moon phase, and then just parsing that in the Shortcuts app.
So cool.
And what did you conclude?
It's for me. It's totally irrelevant what the moon is doing.
You're you didn't discover that you're a werewolf or something?
No.
Shoot.
But you could have that result, Adam. You should still try it.
My version of a werewolf is just when I'm hangry. So.
Yeah, that's true. I've experienced that. Been on the other end.
When I get hungry, just watch out.
No,
just watch out.
Good. Awesome. And you mentioned, Martin, to-dos. So I'm kind of intrigued. Do you not use a to-do app, or you'd actually put to-dos in your day one, like as a reminder? Or?
Well, I do use a to-do app from time to time, but it's depends on the, well, I'd almost say on the moon phase, but every now and then I start using a to-do app again, and then after some time I stop. So basically everything that needs to get done is in my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't get done. But I do try to track the most important tasks in day one. So just when I'm scheduling tomorrow, just add 2 or 3 of the most important things that I want to get done. Just as a reminder again for this is what I want to focus on. And if something else comes up, that's fine, of course. But at least there's the reminder again of what's important.
Nice. I'm wondering, so if you're doing this on a daily basis, I bet it's fairly easy to get back to like your recent entry that you want to follow up on. Do you also use like the filters to filter by uncompleted checklists and stuff like that? Or
no, not really.
Okay.
So the
just curious.
I basically use the check marks feature for the for setting goals on a quarterly, weekly, and daily basis. And I just review them at the end of the period. So every Sunday I check the past week and see how I'm doing. And every end of the quarter I review all the weekly entries and just summarize that. And after that I rarely visit any of those entries again.
Got it. He sounds like a really good CEO of his own personal life. You know what I mean? Really good at goal setting and following up on those things. Like, I admire these qualities.
We need to hire Martin to help us with our own personal organization.
Well, if we take our own advice, which I know is the best thing to do,
that's why we keep doing these.
Is just get into that, like start doing it, make it ours, and that's exactly what Martin has done here. So he's built something that he wants to track for himself.
It's basically starting with a system and then trying to make it better along the way. But having the habit of using the system, that's basically the most important thing I've learned. And there's definitely room for improvement. But at least I have built the habit of journaling, of making the time to write down and think about what I want to work on. So that's definitely a good start. But I definitely don't feel like everything's figured out and everything is finished, so to speak.
Now, I don't mean to intrude here. Feel comfortable to answer as much as or little as you want. But I'm just wondering, as far as like these goals that you're setting for yourself, are they professional goals, like what you want to do in a career? Are they like maybe personality traits that you may want to that you've identified that you want to adjust? Like, what kind of goals are we looking at?
Well, it's mostly personal. It's also a little bit business related, but it's more on personal side. So if I want to do some workouts in the morning, for instance, going to the gym has never really been my hobby. So just looking for other ways of staying active. So for instance, doing a 7-minute workout at least 4 times a week. It's just something that I focused on for a quarter, and after that it's more or less a habit, and I don't really have to think about it anymore.
Cool, very cool.
Right now it's more looking at what I'm eating, so eating more healthy, and learning more about nutrition. Meditating is one thing. So I basically thought to myself, well, why not try to meditate 365 days in a row? Just to really make it a habit and see what it does to my to how I feel. So I just I believe that started just the day before Christmas. So that's part of the Siri Shortcuts. It's just calculating the number of days since the day before Christmas, and right now I can check. I think I'm somewhere near 200 days in a row.
That's great.
Let's have a look. It's today will be the 200th time in a row to meditate. So that's
good job.
Good habit.
Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Tell us about your journals. How many journals do you have? Do you separate business, personal, and then tell us about your use of tags.
Well, for business, I'm working in the Microsoft space. So I'm using Microsoft OneNote more for business. Basically, I'm using two journals. I have my family journal, my personal journal.
Okay.
And I'm experimenting with some additional. I have one for interesting quotes that I've come across.
Nice.
Just for some inspiration. And trying to consolidate some different apps that I'm using for note keeping, for a personal knowledge system, and see if I can integrate that in day one, just to have everything in one application. But I'm still struggling a bit with organizing knowledge inside day one, because day one is really focused on being a journal. Basically having all the entries based on the time, instead of based on a subject, for instance. So I'm still trying to figure out if there's a way to make that work, or if it really should be in a different system.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And sometimes that's the answer. Like, as much as I want everyone to use day one all the time, like sometimes there is a different piece of software that fits that mold better. So yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So whatever works, right?
I'm intrigued with
your... Yeah, well, I do try to keep the number of apps limited.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if it would work fine on in one app, then that's great. But if it's too much struggle, then it's better to keep it in an app that supports the way of working or the way of thinking.
Yeah, agreed.
Speaking of that, using other apps, when you talk about a quotation, you have a journal for quotes, and do you put a different entry for each quote? I have one long-running Evernote with my favorite quotations, and it's just terrible. I mean, it's different font sizes because I'm copying and pasting stuff, and I'd love to convert that to a journal with individual entries.
Yeah,
seems like that makes sense for searching. And
yeah, well, I have a single entry for each quote. And recently I started using tags for the person who wrote the quote. And some of them are more personal things that I've learned that I can summarize in one quote, but most of them are just things I come across. It's about 91 entries at this point, so I can still pretty easily browse through it and just get some reminders or some inspiration. Other than that, there's not a real system in organizing those quotes.
Sure. I think I've shared this on a past podcast, but there's a couple apps, web addresses that I use for my Kindle when I upload highlights. One is readwise.io, and you can enter in your own quotes there, and then it will email you a random list of your quotes to review. So I love that. I'll just get an email with 10 random highlights from books I've read or quotes I've entered, and I could review them, and it's a great way to do it, to have it pushed to you. Free service.
Sounds nice.
So, yeah. What about tags? Do you use tags? Did you mention?
Yes, for the family journal, it's just the name of the kids, for instance, so that it's easier to export, for instance. I still at some point want to make some photo albums. And then it's easier just to filter out and make a album specific for one of the kids, and use a specific tag for holidays. So then it's easier to, for instance, create a holiday album. And for the personal journal, I have tags for the daily entries, the weekly, quarterly, and for the yearly entries. So that's then it's easy just to filter. And if I'm doing the quarterly review, I can just filter out all the weekly entries and review those.
Nice. Yeah.
Great.
I feel like that kind of organization would be necessary to manage that. So those are great tips.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
But yeah, we're gonna work with Martin here and try and share some of maybe your favorite Siri shortcuts, and we'll put them in the description below. Yeah. Basically, it's an iCloud sharing link, so when you click on that, it should open right up into the Siri shortcut. Yeah, the Shortcuts app, where you can install it there if you want. So check those out. I think those would be fantastic helps for people.
Will do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do you remember your first entry?
Yeah, well, I started a couple of weeks after our first kid was born, and basically worked backwards a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's around July 2012.
Great. Good. And how many entries since then?
Let's have a look. Currently, I'm at 2,880 entries.
Awesome.
Bam.
That's great. A lot of history there.
Yeah, well, especially since I'm doing the daily planning, it's another entry each day. So it keeps on adding up.
It's awesome.
That's great. Good.
Habits. That's, I think we've gone back to this multiple times. If you want to make this, how do I say this? If you want to build that habit, that's what you've got to start doing, is building that consistency, catering it and customizing it to the information that you want to record, and then sticking with it. And I will tell you, I've found great satisfaction in going back and reading old entries. I've already expressed many times on this day is my favorite feature, because then I get these little notifications every day and I get to revisit those, and it's really fun. So that's kind of what motivates me to keep going, so that next year I'll have these ones to look at. So
right. At the same time, we keep stressing that everyone does journaling the way you want.
Exactly.
So if you say, I don't really want to create a habit out of that, it'll become mundane. I'd rather just do it when I have some key event, or once a week when I can summarize my mood, whatever. That's there for that.
Yeah, I've been reading about those kind of habits for way too long, and you can read and read and read, and there's always more to read.
Yes.
But one of the common themes that I've been rereading each time is people like James Clear. He's written a book about building habits.
Yes.
Still going to read it at some point, but I think basically it always comes down to just starting small.
Right.
And not making a too big project out of it. You just start with really small baby steps. And for me, that's just getting into the habit of creating the entry. And even if it's just a couple of sentences or a couple of words, at least it's something, and I'm building the habit. And then I can slowly find out if it's really adding value for me. And if it is, then it is also easier. It becomes easier to spend more time on it and get even more value out of it.
Yeah.
We've talked about James Clear in the past, I think the last few podcasts, with Atomic Habits, his book.
Yeah.
That's so good. And the point you're making, which I love, he mentions in the book that one mistake is an outlier. Everyone will make a mistake. You'll forget a day. That's normal. 2 mistakes is the beginning of a pattern.
Yeah, okay.
And that's where, gosh, if you just miss one day, that's okay, but just try not to make 2 in a row, because that becomes a new pattern, new habit.
Well, I like the starting small too.
Yes.
I've started many projects where I try to go too much right at the beginning, and you get burned out.
Yeah.
It's easy to to lose the
luster of the
I wanted to say a Spanish word for it, but you lose the urge to keep going at it.
Say the Spanish word for our Spanish
ganas.
listeners. The ganas.
Ganas. No tiene las ganas.
Okay. That makes sense to you, Martin? Can you translate to Dutch
little bit
for us?
There you go.
Good.
Anyway, yeah.
Great stuff. I guess the last question we always end with is your favorite feature.
Well, I don't think there's just one single feature. I think
That's
it's
fine.
a combination of things. Being able to add photos, having a location and a date, having the weather information really provides a lot more context to an entry. So it's it's not just text. It's not just a picture, but it's a combination of all those things together, which really help. If I, for instance, look at the On This Day feature, which is really nice just to see how our kids were doing 2, 3, 4, or 5 years ago. But it's more than just seeing the picture. It's seeing the entire picture. Was it a warm summer day, or was it really rainy outside? What time was it? That's really providing a lot more context and making it easier to really remember the moment back in time.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
I love it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Martin, for the time. It's been awesome to get to know you better, your workflow, how you use Day One, and it's inspiring.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is a great episode.
Happy
Thank
to
you.
share a bit. I've been listening to the podcast for I think since it started, so it's nice to contribute a little bit.
Well, thank you. Do you have any last tips, any last thoughts you want to share with the community before we sign off?
Well, no, not really. I think for me, it's really just getting into the habit of remembering to write something down. If it's not much, it's not much, but at least you have the habit. Mm-hmm. Because for me, without the habit, I forget to write in the journal, and so sometimes I forget to write down what the kids are experiencing, writing down their important events. But making it a habit really helps me to get to the long-term benefits.
That's great. Does your wife do any journaling, or is that all you with the history?
It's all me. Yeah.
Good for you, the historian of the family.
Hey, like I said, I think the emailing entries is a cool way that multiple people could contribute to a single journal without having to sign into one account and share all content. So maybe something to consider for listeners out there who maybe want other people to contribute to their journal. What I always thought would be a cool idea for the shared journal feature, that I think you could use this email thing, like going on a family vacation or something, and then have everybody write down their own stuff and send it in. You know, I think there's a huge opportunity there. So
expands on the shared albums idea. Go ahead, Martin.
No, I was just confirming, or it sounds like great news for me too. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I just have to say, Brett and I love doing the show. We love sharing ideas, and we love meeting new people and hearing their experiences and their uses. Not only do I think it helps me with my own behaviors with Day One, because as much as I get paid to say this, but I also love the app just as a user. So I love hearing other people's perspectives. So thank you so much for joining us today, Martin.
My pleasure.
Listeners out there, if you need any assistance, please check out the links below for help and support. You can get in contact with the support team. I'm one of those people. Also has links to our help guides and contacting Brett, etc., for setting up these interviews. So check out those links below. And
keep giving us feedback too at Podcasts at Day One app. That's just like Martin reached out and said, hey, I'd listened to the app about Siri Shortcuts. I've got some things I'd love to share. So thank you for that, and continue to give us feedback.
Yeah, no, and we did get some feedback about our technical issues last week with a remote caller. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. You know, it was not a planned ordeal at that time. Like, obviously things had come up unexpectedly, but we wanted to make sure we got an episode out. So, but thank you for your feedback. We definitely take that all in stride and try to do better every time. So
that's right. Thanks for listening to the Day One podcast.